I've been thinking lately over this past week or so a lot about my journey and the aspects of control versus freedom, or control and freedom, that are part of this storyline. And I've had conversations about this with some friends and some clients, as well as they're journeying through some similar experiences. And I notice, as I've made some very significant and pivotal changes in my life, that I have been invited, I'm going to say some gentle invitations to um, learn how to set down these patterns and tools of control that I had become very familiar with. And familiarity feigns safety. Familiarity feigns safety. Because of the familiarity, the associations in my human programming are, we're good here. We know this. And stay in that zone where you know how to manipulate things in this matrix. You know how to control outcomes. You know the formulas and the equations here of 1 + 1 gets you this every time. And so you can trust that. You can trust staying in that territory. And I've seen this. I've seen this come up in so many different contexts, presentations, for the people that I'm working with who are doing this healing as well. They are chained by the illusions of safety that are binding them in these ribbons of control, these patterns and these programmed ways of being that they have learned to master. This is the survival skill. Survival skills come online for a reason, of course. What I mean by that deeper is there's usually some piece of truth and authenticity underneath what then gets distorted and amplified to the point where it's pixelated, and then we're not seeing as much of the truth. But when we pull out of that and scale back the things that are innate to you, the beautiful aspects of who you are naturally at a soul level, these often become the things we amplify and lean too far into, to the point that we're falling head first and tripping over ourselves. Those are the things that become our survival skills. And this is where, in earlier conversations, I've talked about, once this healing happens and our sense of worthiness detaches from the survival skill, then we can see the truth and the beauty of where the genesis of the survival skill came from. And it transforms it into a superpower. You can maintain those elements of yourself. You can stand on the sturdiness of knowing that you have these certain capabilities, these capacities, and they are not keeping you safer than the infinite intelligence that you have access to once you come into a place of central nervous system safety inside of your own being that allows coherence between your heart, mind, and spirit team. And that is that is freedom. This is setting down the tools of control, and in place of that, freedom. This is where freedom is for me. I'm thinking of the vital elements of play and what that means. What do we mean when we are playing? And how natural is that for children before trauma happens? And how important that is as a way to become more familiar again with our own soul's frequency at the more natural set point, the authenticity without performance. If you feel like, when is the last time I've really played and been playful inside of presence, and you can't think of when that last time was, then we may have some healing work to do. I remember, well, I think generally, I remember and I think that when we're really young and we're coming right from source, we are more naturally attuned to the truth, which is the intuition and our soul essence. We speak the language of energy fluently when we're a child, and we are trained to put the mind and the learned things from this particular lifetime into the driver's seat. That's not a natural thing that we would all potentially need to do if we weren't trained into it. But in this society as it stands, this is what happens. Children are trained to let go of the play, to quiet the imagination, to silence the intuition, to disconnect from their own antenna of infinite wisdom and truth, their own capacity to channel information that is coming from more than the smallness of the limited mind space when it is turned off and unable to receive. When it is disconnected, we are trained into doing that. And now I have been on such a journey with this healing and the spiritual awakening and the remembrance that I am being led and retraining or learning to forget the programming new codes. I am on the other side of it now, where I am having to retrain my mind to take the back seat. It is important. It is vital. It's a part of this whole system. And I want it to be integrated and to trust the energy that it inhabits. My mind is inhabiting the bigger field of life force energy that is my soul essence, that is powering this being. And what a silly notion for my mind to think it cannot trust the essence that is the breath of life, from which its reality is made possible. Yes? But that is a part of this journey, and what I'm talking about as we weave in these elements of learning to set down the control that our mind has been trained into believing is essential in order to maintain safety and connection. And I'm quoting connection there because I think when we're in that place of experiencing some separation of self in way of our mind being in the lead where our soul should be, then we fundamentally have some core issues where we may say we don't feel safe here, we don't trust here, we have trust issues, we have wounds of betrayal, and yes, all valid. And deeper than that, when we do the healing work in countless EMDR sessions and through my own personal experience, I see time and time again, there are some deeper revelations that come to the surface about how to repair the bond within. And people say, I realize somehow that I have something in the way of me being able to trust myself. Something's not quite flowing in the circuitry of the whole being that I am right now. And this is where the repair happens. It doesn't come from us convincing ourselves that the other person that's the focal point is trustworthy. It is a deeper healing of our own energy field first, and the rivets or chasms that have just etched spaces that still exist, separating us from our own soul essence. And then I hear people in that dynamic saying, I'm having trouble discerning what is coming from my intuition versus my mind, what is coming from guidance versus trauma triggers and wounding. I don't want to repeat these cycles and patterns. How can I tell the difference? And it's not a matter of answering the question of how. It is more of a journeying of continuing with the healing work to the degree that we feel safe enough to fully come home to ourselves. When the gaps close and the energy is flowing, the resonance is the answer, and it is felt deeply, not analyzed, not dissected. I remember when I was younger and I felt more in alignment, and I led from that fluency and that natural place of not needing my mind to understand everything ahead of time before convincing myself of a readiness to proceed. And that just wasn't a requirement. I had a level of trust with myself and the natural flow that allowed me to move in alignment so fluidly and with connection. And what that looked like is I would feel something and do it. I would get this notion and I wouldn't question it at all. I would just go up to the person and say what it was that I was feeling the need to say and do whatever it was. And so much in flow state like that, and in presence and in the fluency of trusting my soul first without my mind having to be leading from a place of fear and control. And hold on a minute, we're not ready to move forward unless we know all of the probable outcomes of this situation and we get some guarantees so that there's no risk of unknowns. And you need to, like, telling my soul, telling the calling, telling the pull and the knowingness, we're not convinced yet. We need to see some pie charts of this before we can proceed. Like, no. So before that was happening, there was so much flow and authenticity and genuine connection. And I would hear stories, even within this last year, I'll still have experiences where people will tell me these stories of, do you remember back in high school when you X, Y, and Z, or in middle school and you were chaperoning this dance and you did this, this, and this. And it takes me a minute and I don't remember because a lot of times when I'm so in the flow state and I'm not questioning and my mind is not trying to be micromanaging my soul calling and the direction, and is more of a team player than a critic on the sidelines, making some comments from the peanut gallery and throwing wrenches into the to the game plans, making us question our readiness for things. I, in a place of when I'm channeling and I am in that authenticity, I am not always remembering everything that happens. I'm just not having the need to. And so people will start telling these stories. Do you remember when you were younger and we had this experience together? And they'll tell me some details that I didn't know until the very moment that they're telling me in reflection of this. This and this was going on in my life. And the fact that you did that right at the exact time changed things for me. And it meant more than what I could put words to. And that is connection. That is connection. As I got a little older and a little more hardened, guarded with my heart, had experiences where I just felt a bit wounded and became, by virtue of that, more disconnected from my own ability to maintain coherence between my mind and my heart space. And there was a disruption in the circuitry. I very much held back. I didn't do things as much like that. I just kept to myself quite a bit more. I went in, I'm thinking about when I was in higher education. I'd go in, sit down, do the thing, leave. And I was not experiencing connection to the same degree that I was when I was young and I am now. Because I had turned that part of me off, rather. I had really shrunk my energy field down inside of myself from a place of woundedness and my mind space convincing that this is the way to protect. You're not safe to be fully in authenticity, to be seen, to be experienced. And what comes more so from being in that energy, we still have relationships, we still are relational people, but I'd say there's more attachment than connection when you're in the wounded space, which is this painful contrasting irony of being on earth, right? And I feel like I'm dramatizing that, but it's not easy, is it? But that's the self-fulfilling prophecy is, oh, you feel you're not safe, so you're going to shrink down your energy field, let your mind do the leading and be in control. And now you're magnetizing in more relationships that are built on attachment rather than connection. And attachment is not a very safe place to be, is it? And that is a whole other conversation of how do we explain that. But as I healed and I felt more whole, more trusting, and just online with my energy field and all the beautiful angelic energies and spirit guides that are a part of that are interwoven into that. Now I am safe for authentic connection, which is love, It is not a dependency. There is no need for the undertones of fear, and therefore detachment can be present. I remember being a young woman and reading in Buddhism philosophies about detachment for the first time and having a pang in my heart of like, oh, I'm personally offended by this theory of detachment because I didn't understand it. I didn't understand it at the time. It was not integrated. I had not had the experience that I have now. And as I've come home to this fullness, this wholeness, this unmovable sense of deep connection, no gaps in between of my own energy field, I have come to this place of a much greater capacity for love, authenticity, and connection. And as I was reflecting on all of this, I heard from Spirit this phrasing: detachment is not the absence of love, it is the absence of fear. There is more room for connection, and connection is different than attachment. Connection saves room, has capacity to be seen, to be experienced, to be witnessed. And there can be playful energy inside of that. It's a bit hard to hold capacity for all of that when you're inside of a bunker of fear, right? You move so much differently with somebody when you're from that place of wanting to make the other person prove before you feel safe to lower walls. And it just is an inside job in a certain type of way. I had a conversation with somebody, one of my clients recently, around this vital encouragement from their spirit team around play. And this person, right on it, beautifully done, executed, came back in and talked about the ways in which they played. And when you have complex trauma from childhood, you literally can have associations in your brain that says play is not safe. Play is not safe because if we're in play, we're in presence. If we're in presence, we're not on guard. We're not on guard. If we're not on guard, we're not prepared to protect ourselves. So we cannot play because we always need to be waiting and ready and hyper vigilant regarding the next thing that might happen or when that door is going to swing open, and we all need to be prepared to run up to our bedrooms and lock the doors, right? Play is dangerous, is a place, is an association that can happen. So we're healing this wound and we're practicing playing, training our being to create a new association. It is now safe to play. And there's a desensitization process to that itself, inching into that and doing that with no performance, no observers. And so this started just with the person and their dog, and that's it, and no other humans there. Like when it's just the two of you, try to play a little bit, right? Play around, get a little silly, just try a little bit, even if it feels faint, or practice that first. Let's just try it, start dipping our toes into retraining our nervous system to feel a sense of safety and freedom through play. And this person has had this dog for several years and came in and said, I did this and it was amazing. And I got to see my dog's personality. This person is very involved in daily care for the dog and has been for years. And that's attachment, connection through this place of safety inside ourselves where we can play. Now you see, I got to see the dog's personality. Amazing.